All right, thank you all for being here today. We'll start with head coach Charles Kelly. Coach, before we take some questions, just reflect a little bit on what you've seen from the guys the first couple weeks of camp.
Well, the first thing is I think that, like I've said since I've been here, these players that were here, that stayed here, and the players that we brought in, they aren't afraid to work. We haven't had an issue with guys not wanting to practice, not wanting to compete, do the things that it takes to prepare. That doesn't mean we're anywhere close to being ready to play, but they worked extremely hard. I think, in today's age of college football, where every year you're building a new team, people ask me about that, and I've made the comments before. They have to do that every year in the NFL. Maybe not to some of the numbers that some of the college teams are having to deal with right now, but that's just part of what we do, is having to build a new team. And what we think is, listen, there's a standard that we have at Jax State, expectations that we have, and like I tell our staff, what we want to do is recruit people that reflect those standards. And if we recruit those kind of people, then we'll be able to work hard and, develop a team. But I've been really pleased so far with, I guess tomorrow will be our 12th day of camp. Yesterday was our first scrimmage. So, there were a lot of good things, but there were some things that, we've got to, work on, we got to clean up. But we have a sense of urgency, but we understand we have time to be able to clean those things up.
Open it up for questions.
Yes, sir.
Just what were your takeaways? You said the scrimmage yesterday. What was your takeaways?
I think the first thing was I was disappointed early in the scrimmage. Not necessarily the scrimmage, but the way we came out to the field to prepare. The way we warmed up, the way we were getting ready to practice. I didn't like that. I thought that was one of the worst things we had done during camp. You have to come out and you have to get ready for a game just like you get ready for a practice. And it's not a walkthrough, it's not a jog through. You got to get your body ready to play the game. I didn't think our guys did a very good job of that. Now, we got a lot of young players, whether that was anxiety, about the scrimmage, whatever it is, but I stopped right before we started the scrimmage, and I was like, we're not going to do this. And I thought they picked it up a little bit after that. Once the scrimmage got going, there were good plays on both sides of the ball. And as the head coach, you like seeing that. You like, the offense being successful, defense being successful. There were some good things in the kicking game, but you can't wait till 10 minutes in the game to get started. The thing that we're trying to get our guys to see is it's the power of two. It's the first 2 minutes of the game and the last 2 minutes of the game are the most important. That's the most important time. I kind of compare it to like flying an airplane. When we fly somewhere, when the pilot is flying the plane, the most important thing is the takeoff and the landing. That's the most dangerous times when you're flying. So you got to be at your peak when the game starts, and you got to have the mental toughness and the focus to be able to play the same way in the last 2 minutes that you did the first 2 minutes. So I think those kinds of things are what I'm looking for. There were some individual flashes that were really good. I thought I think our young offensive line did some good things. Defensively, we stopped the run for, in a lot of times, except for a couple of big plays. And we've got to be able to limit those big plays. Usually big plays occur for two things: missed assignments or missed tackles. The third thing would be lack of effort, but if they don't give effort, they're not going to be out there. So we eliminated that right to begin with. But I thought our backs ran good. I think Max has done a good job. We've got a good rotation of the guys that we want to have in there. And, so there were some good things on both sides of the ball.
Do you like the mix of kind of veteran guys who have played some college football games and some of the younger guys? Do you think that mix has helped you?
Absolutely. And in this day and age, you're going to have to play young players. People early in the week, After practice, somebody asked me about our young offensive line. Well, I think every year since Rick Trickett's been here, we played young guys on the offensive line. And listen, I wake up every day wishing I was young. That's a good thing to be young. I think that having that experience, having guys that have played the game, definitely helps those players' learning curve, especially when they're made of the right stuff. And I think most of the guys that we brought in here are made of the right thing. So showing them how to go about their business on a day-to-day basis to where they can, get better and create value for themselves.
Eli?
Coach, how would you describe the pace of your offense versus what we've seen here in the last year or two?
Now we are, what we want to be on offense, all right? We want to be fundamentally sound, but we want to be a fast operation. We want to be fast, and we want to be able to run the ball to win and throw the ball to score. But I'll tell you the most difficult thing, and even Coach Rick Trickett brought this up. We change our tempos. When you go fast all the time, defenses they've kind of gotten better at that over the years of being that tempo. Okay, I'm playing fast, we're going to play fast on defense. I think what Clint has done a good job of keeping that same tempo, but also changing the tempos. So when you're fast, you slow it down, and now you're fast again, which we did a lot of that with Sark when I was at Alabama, and that puts as much stress on a defense as anything of being able to change tempos. And I think Coach has done a good job of that. But we want to be a fast operation. We want to be able to make people line up, and I think it gives us probably some maybe more familiar looks on defense when you play fast. I think that does a lot of times, but we want to do that.
Mike?
If I added it up correctly, this will be your 31st year in college football in a full-time capacity.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So what's the difference for you sitting in that chair as compared to the other 30 years?
Okay, so two things, and a couple of head coaches that I work for told me, when you get to be a head coach, there's two things that stick out that you get to control. You get to control who you work with every day. That was my choice. So I was able to pick the staff that I wanted to work with. I get to pick the hours that we work. We work extremely hard, but we work until we get it done. If that takes 18 hours, that's what we have to do. But I think the biggest thing for me is now I'm responsible for everybody in this building. I was telling the players and the coaches last night, when you're a position coach or coordinator, you want your group to perform well, and if you don't perform well, you'll be looking for a job, okay? But as a head coach, now you want everybody to perform well, but you're responsible for everybody in the building. It's just not you and your family, it's every coach and their families and the people that rely on them. I think, to me, that's the biggest difference. As far as the coaching part of it, I'm going to coach DBs the way I've always coached DBs. I'm not the position coach, but listen, I thought I was a pretty good GA, so that's what I want to be. I want to be their GA. I want them, you tell me what you want, how you want me to help these players, but I still like the coaching, so I get to be involved in that, and Max lets me, get involved on the special teams. But I've been able to hire good coaches, and I want to be able to let them coach. I don't want to handcuff them. The way I've told people is, it's like I'm the architect. This is how I want it to look on offense. This is how I want it to look on defense. This is how I want it to look in special teams. And I feel like I've hired the best contractors in the country to make it look that way.
We'll do Max and Thomas.
I was obviously, there's been a lot of talk about how many newcomers you guys had to add, but according to what they passed out, it's only the fourth fewest in the conference. Is it just the new reality where you're bringing in 50 new guys, whether that's through high school portal a year, especially maybe at the group of 5 level?
Yeah, that bringing in new guys, of course, with transfers, of course, with high school players too. That's just the world we're in right now. And listen, as long as you know the rules and you know how things are, you can make plans to adjust that. And that's just the way it is. And there's no use complaining about it. And the way I look at it is this, and I've said this before, I want to help every guy in our program create value for themselves. If they create value for themselves and it gives them the opportunity to move on to the NFL, or if they choose to move somewhere that they think it betters them and helps them more, that's just part of where we're at. Because you can't be twofold about it, because I've been at places where we benefited from that. We're benefiting from that here. We benefited from that at Alabama. I mean, we probably wouldn't make it to the national championship game if we hadn't got Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs. So everywhere I've been, we've benefited from it. I think now it's just a little more, you're dealing with a little more numbers now than you were before.
One guy we talked about the other day, Deshaun Davis, is the guy that you brought in. Can you tell me about both what you remember about him as a recruit and what he's like on your coaching staff?
Yeah, I absolutely remember. I can remember watching on video. Jeremy Pruitt and I were at Florida State together, and we'd watched all these linebackers, and he was as instinctive. He wasn't a big guy. He wasn't very big, but he was instinctive to play, and he loved the game. The only thing big he's got long arms. No matter how tall he was, I remember that. He had long arms. He could get off of people and, do things. I loved him as a player. I loved his intensity as a player. One of the biggest, probably the biggest compliment you can ever get as a player is to be voted captain of your team. He was voted captain of his team at Auburn. So he's got leadership ability, and he's got influence on other people. The thing I'll say about Deshaun, not always, it's not sometimes it's hard for a guy when he's close to the time he finishes playing to be able to necessarily teach it. It's different teaching something than it is playing. He has a gift of being able to teach these players what he sees, and they can duplicate it. And I tell him all the time, that's a gift that you have. But he's very energetic, which I like. But he's an extremely good teacher. And as I've said about every one of our coaches are great recruiters. But, somebody asked me, well, you're going to hire good recruiters? Well, if you're a good coach, you better be a good recruiter, because you got to recruit your room every day. That's what coaching and teaching is. Are they buying what you're teaching them? And if you can't do that, then it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, they won't grasp it.
Joe, you got the last one.
And along those lines, a lot of talk these days about having to recruit your own roster. What's your approach to that?
I think just to be honest with them, like I said, there were a couple of guys that left in the spring that decided to leave and do other places where they felt like from a financial situation it bettered them. But I think we were honest with them the whole way, and they handled things the right way. All I ask our players and our coaches is to handle things the right way. If we don't want people tampering with our players, but if it comes a time where you decide, I want to explore this opportunity, and you've done what you are supposed to in this program, then we're going to help you no matter what. But as far as recruiting, keeping the gist of your roster, it's relationships. Yeah, I had a player that told me he had an opportunity to go somewhere else, and he said, Coach, he said, it's because, he said, I feel like I have good relationships with the coaches here. And he said, every player in the locker room, every one of their names. He said, that's what impresses me. I never thought about it like that, but I do think the relationship now, and even guys that leave, you know, you don't end that relationship. But on the other hand, there are a lot of guys out there that you're recruiting that may go somewhere else where you don't burn that bridge in relationships, because it may come back to where they come back here. There may be an opportunity here one day. So I think keeping the relationship, and listen, I just believe players are smart. They know if they're being developed. I mean, that's the key to our program here, is we want to help them develop. And if they feel like they're developing, then you got a better chance of keeping them. It's hard to fool guys, especially the best players. They know right now, you know. But I think more than anything, it's the relationships that you have with your players. And that doesn't mean you can't coach them hard. I tell our coaches that all the time. If you'll be fair and tell them the truth, then we got a chance with them.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Coach.
Thank you.